I don't talk about this much. I mean, I talk about the war. I talk about what happened. But this is different. A sergeant, you're responsible. That's what they tell you in training. Your men are your responsibility. You're supposed to keep them alive. That's your job. And when you can't, when you fail at that job, it stays with you. It never goes away. I had a platoon, 42 men, give or take. Numbers changed with replacements, but at full strength, around 42. They were good men, most of them. Some were scared, some were brave. Most were just trying to do their job and get home alive. I couldn't blame them for that. We landed in France and we were moving through the bocage, the hedgerow country, thick hedgerows that went on for miles. And the Germans had been in France for 4 years by that point. They knew every inch of it. They had positions dug in, machine guns placed, artillery registered. We didn't know nothing. We were just moving forward and trying not to get killed. The first casualty was Thompson, private first class, from Missouri, I think, or maybe Arkansas. I can't remember exactly now. But I remember his face. I remember he had red hair. I remember he wrote letters home every night, every single night. I remember he told me once that he was engaged, was going to get married when he got back. We were moving down a lane between two hedgerows. There wasn't supposed to be anything there. Intelligence said it was clear. Intelligence was wrong. There was a machine gun positioned in the hedgerow ahead. We didn't see it until it opened up. Thompson was about 15, 20 feet ahead of me. And when that machine gun started firing, he went down. I saw him go down, and I yelled for him to get down, get to cover, but he was already down. I went forward to get him. I should have sent somebody else. I should have stayed back. But I went forward, and I dragged him back behind the hedgerow, and I looked at him. He'd been hit in the chest multiple times. He was trying to say something, but he couldn't quite make the words come. I told him it would be okay. Told him to stay still. Told him help was coming, but I knew. I already knew. By the way, he looked at me. By the way, the blood just kept coming. I knew. He died about 2 minutes later. Right there, behind the hedgerow, with me holding his hand. And I remember thinking, his fiancee's never going to see him again. She's going to get a telegram, and that's all she's going to have, a telegram, and maybe a folded flag, and she's going to spend the rest of her life wondering what he would have been, what their life would have been. And it was my responsibility. I was supposed to keep him alive, and I failed. We called in artillery, and we pushed through that position. Killed or wounded most of the German squad there. I didn't feel any satisfaction about that. I just felt empty and angry, but mostly I felt responsible. After Thompson, there was Martinez, Corporal Martinez, good soldier, knew what he was doing. He was from Texas, had a wife and 2 kids, had pictures of them, used to show them around. The kids were maybe 5 and 3. He used to talk about teaching his boy to fish, taking him down to the creek near his house. We were dug in near a stream, small stream, and there was sniper fire coming from across the stream. I could see where it was coming from, but I couldn't get a clear shot. I told Martinez to hold position, to keep his head down. He was good about that usually, careful. But there was a man down in front of us, another soldier, hit, bleeding bad. And Martinez wanted to go get him. I told him no. I told him the man was already gone. We couldn't save him, and we'd get killed trying. But Martinez went anyway, crawled out there, got to the other soldier. And the sniper fired 1 shot. That was all it took. One shot and Martinez was down, and the other soldier too. Finally, both of them out there in that field. I should have stopped him. I should have grabbed him and held him down. I was a sergeant. I could have ordered him back, but I let him go because I saw it in his face. Saw that he couldn't leave a man behind, couldn't live with himself if he didn't try. So I let him go. And he died trying to save somebody who was already dead. His wife never got to see him again. Those kids, 5 and 3, they grew up without their father. And somewhere in Texas, there's probably a wife who never remarried, who spent the rest of her life with a hole in it. And that's on me. That's something I have to carry. By the time we got to the 3rd or 4th week, we'd lost 8 men, 8 of my 42. That doesn't sound like a lot when you say it like that, but it's not a number. It's 8 people, 8 men who I knew, who I talked to, who I was responsible for. I made decisions, command decisions. I decided which route we'd take. I decided when we'd attack. I decided when we'd hold position. And some of those decisions, they led to men dying. Not because I was trying to get them killed, but because in war, people die. And a lot of it is random. A lot of it is luck. And a lot of it is the decisions you make. And if your decisions go the wrong way, people die. There was a kid, really just a kid, couldn't have been more than 18. Private Kowalski from Chicago, Polish name, Polish family. His mother had written me letters asking me to look after him, asking me to make sure he stayed safe. What was I supposed to do with that? How was I supposed to promise a mother I'd keep her son alive in a war? But I tried. I really tried. I kept him in the middle of the formation, away from the edges. I made sure he had good cover in the foxholes. I checked his rifle, made sure he knew what he was doing. I talked to him, tried to keep his spirits up. And then one day there was an attack. Germans came at us from the left flank, not expected, seemed to come out of nowhere. And I was repositioning men, getting them in better defensive positions. And I sent Kowalski with another soldier to set up a position on the right. It was a good position, should have been safe, but the Germans flanked us from a different direction. And Kowalski was in the way. They found his body the next morning, just lying there. Head wound. Died instantly, probably. Didn't even know what hit him. And I thought about his mother. Thought about that letter she'd written. Thought about how I'd failed her. Failed to keep her son alive. Failed to bring him home. You tell yourself it wasn't your fault. You tell yourself that in war people die. That you can't control everything. That you made the best decisions you could with the information you had. All of that is true. But it doesn't matter. Not really. Because those men are still dead. And you're still alive. And that's the thing that gets you. That's what you think about. Why them and not me? Why did I survive when they didn't? What was the difference? Luck? Timing? God's will? I don't know. But it feels like guilt either way. I had to write letters. That was part of the job. When a man died, the next of kin got a telegram from the Army. But they also got a letter from me, from their sergeant, telling them about their son, their husband, their brother, telling them what a good man he was, telling them something that might bring them comfort. I don't know if it did. I hope it did. But I remember sitting down and writing those letters, and it was like reliving it every time. Every time I wrote a name, every time I tried to sum up a man's life in a few paragraphs, every time I had to explain why he was dead and I wasn't, I kept their dog tags. I shouldn't have. They went up the chain of command, but I kept some of them, kept them for a long time. Had them in a box under my bed. My wife found them after the war. She didn't know what to do with them. Neither did I. They were just cold metal pieces with names on them. But they represented men, real men, who had dreams and families and futures that got taken away. The worst one was a kid I couldn't save. His name was Williams, James Williams. He was from New York, Brooklyn, I think. Young, maybe 20, maybe younger. He wanted to be a musician, played guitar. I let him bring a guitar to France against regulations. He'd play it in the evenings when we had downtime, and it was beautiful. It was maybe the only beautiful thing in that whole war. Hearing him play, we were dug in one night and Williams was playing, not loud, just soft, quiet. And I was sitting there and I felt like maybe we could survive this. Maybe we could all make it home. Maybe it'd be okay. 3 days later, Williams got hit during an artillery barrage. Shrapnel caught him in the back and the leg. He wasn't killed immediately. He was conscious. He was screaming, and I couldn't do anything. The medic worked on him, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. And he was in pain, and he was scared, and he was calling for his mother. And I'm his sergeant, and I'm supposed to be able to do something. Supposed to be able to help, but I couldn't. I could just sit there and watch him die, watch him suffer, and then die. I held his hand while he died, and he asked me if I thought God would forgive him. Forgive him for what? I don't know. He hadn't done nothing wrong, but he was scared of dying, scared of what came after. And I told him, yes, God would forgive him. I told him he'd done his duty, done what he was supposed to do. Told him he could rest now. And he died thinking maybe that was true. That guitar never got home. It got left behind in France, or it got destroyed. I don't know what happened to it. But I think about that sometimes. Think about how Williams's music got left behind in Europe, how it never made it back to New York, how people never got to hear what he might have become. The thing about being a sergeant, a good sergeant, is you get close to your men. You have to. You have to know them well enough to make decisions about them. Know their strengths and their weaknesses. Know what they're capable of. Know how they'll react under fire. You have to be close to them. But that closeness means you care about them. And when they die, it hurts. And there's nothing you can do about that hurt. It just has to be carried. I had nightmares for years. Still do sometimes. I'd wake up and I'd be back there, back in that hedgerow, back in that field. And I'd be trying to save them and I couldn't. My hands wouldn't work right. My voice wouldn't come out right. And I'd be screaming and nobody could hear me. My wife got used to it. In the beginning, she'd wake me up, try to bring me back to reality. After a while, she just let me have the dreams. Let me wake up on my own. And she'd hold me until I came back all the way. She never complained, never said I should just get over it, because she understood that some things you don't get over. You just learn to live with them. I went back once to France. Went back in 1970 or 1971, I think it was. Just me. Didn't bring my wife, didn't tell anybody. I just went. I went back to the places where we'd fought, where my men had died. The bocage looked different, more peaceful. The hedgerows were the same, but everything else was different. It had been 25, 26 years. The world had moved on. France had healed. Life had happened, but I could still see it. I could still see where Thompson died. Could still see the field where Martinez went down. Could still see the line of hedgerows where we dug in that day. It was all still there. In my head, I sat in the field and I cried. Just sat there and cried for those men, for their families, for what we'd lost, for what I'd failed to do. I hadn't cried since the war, 25 years. But I sat in that field and I cried. People sometimes ask me if I ever felt like I did a good job as a sergeant, if I was proud of what I accomplished. And I don't know how to answer that. I kept my platoon as intact as possible. I made decisions that I thought were right at the time. I tried my best. But 8 men died under my command. 8. And maybe some of them could have been saved if I'd made different decisions. Or maybe they would have died anyway. I'll never know. And that's what haunts me, that not knowing. I kept the names. Even now, all these years later, I remember the names. Thompson, Martinez, Kowalski, Williams, and about 4 others. I remember their faces. I remember conversations I had with them. I remember them asking me questions about things they were worried about whether they'd survive, about whether I thought we'd win. I remember their hopes and their fears. And I remembered that I couldn't save them. A lot of people think being a sergeant is about being tough, about making hard decisions and not caring too much, about being able to send men into danger without blinking. That's not what it is. Not the good ones anyway. The good ones care too much. And that caring, it's a burden. It's something you carry forever. I'm 94 years old. I've had 75 years since that war. And I still think about those men. Still think about what I could have done differently. Still think about the letters I had to write to their mothers and wives. Still think about the dog tags I kept. My wife passed 5 years ago, and I got out that box of dog tags, looked at them again, and I held them and I remembered their voices, remembered their laughter, remembered their dreams, and I thought about what a privilege it was to know them, what an honor it was to serve with them, and how grateful I am that I at least got to remember them, that I got to carry their memory forward, that I got to tell people about them. Got to make sure they weren't just numbers in a report. Got to make sure they were remembered as men, as people, as the good soldiers they were. I don't know if that makes up for not saving them. I don't think anything makes up for that, but it's something. It's what I can do. I hope their families know. I hope somewhere a daughter or a son or a grandchild knows that their relative was a good man, a brave man, a man who did his duty and who served with honor, even if he didn't come home, even if he didn't get to live the life he was supposed to live. I hope they know he mattered, that his life meant something, because it did. It absolutely did. And I wish I could have saved him. I wish I could have saved all of them. That's the burden of being a sergeant. That's what you carry forever. God bless them all. And God forgive me for not bringing them home.